Today, I'm going to talk about leadership avoidance and the hidden habits that quietly destroy momentum. This specifically comes from the blog that I just published, and it looks at how avoidance protects your comfort. You see, personal agency is the exertion of your free will. It is your choice. And so in this blog, I dive into what does that actually mean? And why do leaders avoid decision making? Well, if you've ever been in a difficult situation, you and I both know that making decisions can be challenging. Why? Because it can be uncomfortable. Imagine that you're dealing with an employee who has, say, stolen something. And in a deeper dive, the first response would be stealing is wrong. Stealing from an organization has a response to it, whether it's termination or writing up or whatever the policy and the process is. But in a conversation, the reality comes out that this employee stole because there were medical bills of a family member that needed to be addressed. And so this individual had a reason for stealing. And so at that point, there's so many different opportunities for a response. How would you respond? Would you automatically fire that person? Would you um, write that person up? Would you be understanding and say, like, oh, well, this person is having a difficult time, so stealing in this case is okay, right? So in leadership, we have many decisions to make, and decisions happen abruptly. So, why would people avoid decision making? I'm going to come back to why people avoid decisions. People avoid decisions because they are responsible for the decisions that are made. And sometimes difficult conversations can be hard to had. And so decision making is delayed. Now, people don't always delay or avoid difficult conversations or difficult situations because they don't have the skills or the talents to handle those types of situations. It can happen because they understand that they are responsible for their decision making. So, what are some of the leadership avoidance that we can see? We see avoiding in different conversations, we see uh, delays in action steps, we see postponing of conversations or rolling out things. For example, if there's a curriculum that needs to be rolled out in education, it can be delayed. We see in the classroom specifically, we can see educators that uh, delay in addressing a student behavior. At the instructional coach level, we can see instructional coaches that are working with educators and they're not seeing a quick enough change. And because of that, they delay a conversation that needs to take place for an instructional change. And why? Why do leaders fall into the avoidance trap? Well, here's 5 reasons. Sometimes there's a fear of conflict. People are afraid of what might happen. What if they say something that the other individual doesn't like? What if there is a negative response to a decision that was made? People want to be liked. Why not? Who doesn't want to be liked? And then being a leader, it, it can become tiring if you're consistently making decisions all the time, which we are. I remember I used to joke because in my former role, all day long I was delegating, making decisions. Like it was just boom, 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 go, go, go. And I remember I would get home and my partner would say, "What would you like for dinner?" And I literally would say something like, I've been making decisions all day. Can you just handle it? Can you just take care of whatever it is that we're going to eat? Can you just decide whatever movie we want to watch? Because all day long I was on, all day long I was taking care of decisions and using my mental capabilities. And by the time I got home, I really just wanted to relax. So that's number three, decision fatigue. Also, people, leaders specifically, can avoid making decisions because of perfectionism. Sometimes when people have very high standards, they want things to look a certain way and be a certain way. And that can result in a lack of delegation and a lack of decision making because they don't want things to be not as good as they uh, envisioned them, right? That's perfectionism. Some leaders wait for the perfect moment that will never arrive. Because here in humanhood, in real life, there's no such thing as perfect. And number five is the lack of self-awareness. Without reflection, avoidance patterns become invisible habits. And what is the cost of leadership avoidance? Ooh, leadership avoidance is extremely expensive. It can create stagnation in productivity. And one of the really big things that I see is trust begins to erode. Why? Because teams expect their leader to be clear, they expect decisions and direction. And when there's uncertainty, and questions are not answered with transparency, then with time, there's a compact impact of that leader losing trust. Another cost of leadership avoidance is problems grow larger in time. Issues rarely resolve on their own, and it can get better. It can get worse. So one of the things I was thinking about is, so I rented a home that I had, and I was renting the home, and the individual that was renting there, she there was a leak in the roof, in the ceiling. And I remember asking, how long has this been there? And she said, well, it's been there a while, but my son first saw it a couple weeks ago. And when he saw it, I told him, let me know if it gets worse. And friends, it got worse. And ultimately, what happened was the whole ceiling collapsed. It started with a little bit of in the top, the paint was holding the little drops of water, but then the entire bubble popped and the whole ceiling dropped. Have you ever experienced a problem like that, where there are situations that happen and it's not addressed and then it doesn't resolve, it just gets worse? So I'm thinking specifically about education. And one of the things I know has been challenging because of enrollment is that school districts have had to close schools because of finances. Schools get paid based on the number of students that they have enrolled. And when enrollment drops, the cost of electricity, the cost of mortgage, the building, all those things don't go away. But if there's a drop in enrollment, then the ratio of the cost of that facility is higher than the money coming in. And so I have seen in school districts where there's an avoidance, a leader is avoiding having that conversation with parents in the community on what is financially feasible. And what happens is in some instances, it's different across the nation, right? But when a leader chooses to avoid a situation such as this, they can get into financial troubles. And when there's no conversation with the community is blindsided that a school is going to have to close. Whereas a leader who's being transparent with the stakeholders and sharing, here's financially where we're at, here's the numbers of enrollment, we need to increase our enrollment, and if we don't, here are some of the ramifications. So the real cost of leadership avoidance can be shown in time because problems can grow larger if they are not addressed. Number three, organizational momentum slows. What does that mean? Progress requires decisive leadership. Avoidance creates hesitation that spreads across teams. Now, I remember when, think about in education, we have standardized assessments. And I remember having the conversation about the standardized assessments. They were going to get changed, and we were going to be in a position where, as an organization, as a school district, one of the assessment tools that we were going to have to do was going to require our students to use headphones and a microphone at the kindergarten level. Now, this change was not going to occur until the next year. And some leaders just wanted to avoid the situation altogether. We'll handle the problem when the problem gets here. We'll deal with the situation when the situation gets here. Well, as a leader, I wanted to begin training our students on how to use headphones, how to use a microphone, and in a playful game way, so that by the time the assessment came in, which was a year away, the students would already feel comfortable with their headphones and their microphones. That was looking at the situation long term and creating actionable steps to improve that. Well, sometimes leaders don't want to do that. They would rather avoid making a decision because there was cost incurred of getting the headphones and training educators and then training the students. All that had cost incurred. And sometimes leaders want to avoid that because there is a cost incurred. But the long run was a higher improvement based on that time investment. So, number four, another leadership avoidance. Why? Because leadership credibility weakens when we avoid. People know leaders that they can trust and leaders that are questionable. And I remember I worked under a superintendent who had high standards and communicated consistently with the leaders within the organization. And I remember when that leader retired, there was a new leader that came in. And the new leader that came in really needed time to get to know the way the culture and the way that the organization worked. And so this leader avoided making big decisions that were very necessary because the leader didn't want to ruffle any feathers and didn't want people to not like the decisions that were being made. You see, being a leader can be challenging, and sometimes decisions are not going to be appreciated or liked. But decision making is necessary for leaders. And when we avoid our decisions and we don't exert personal agency for the overall improvement, that can be a problem. So, what is the shift from avoidance to agency? Agency means that you have free will, and free will is your personal agency. That means that you have the opportunity to first lead within and then to be a leader throughout. So, when a person actually acknowledges and chooses to take action and make decisions, then they are exerting their personal agency as opposed to avoiding a decision because of fear or other reasons. Here are four ways. Remember, this is a blog that was written, and this is just a quick overview. Here are four ways to break leadership avoidance. One, recognize the avoidance patterns. Oftentimes, there are reasons why decisions are not made. And when we can recognize what the patterns are that you as an individual are operating on, are you not making a decision because you are afraid? Are you are you not making a decision because you know that there will be a cost and time, or that people might not like you because of the decision? Who knows? But here's four ways to break leadership avoidance. Number two, reframe the discomfort as growth. So I remember I had an assistant superintendent. I was overseeing programs for uh, different populations. I was overseeing an English learner program. I was overseeing the McKinney-Vento program, which is students who are experiencing homelessness, and a couple other ones. And I was making some changes in regards to some professional development that was going to be delivered. And I remember an assistant superintendent coming into my office and saying, "Hey, I got a call from a leader, and they don't like that this change is happening. And we were going to be pulling in all of our educators that were serving this specific population to join at one school site, and they were going to receive some training. It had never been done this way, and it was going to be a change, and it was going to be different." And I remember the assistant superintendent coming into me and saying, "I'm working really hard to trust you, but you're doing something that is not what we've done in the past." And I listened to what this assistant superintendent was saying. And then I looked at the assistant superintendent and I said, "I hear and understand what you're saying. I need to know either A, you're going to trust me, or you're not. And what's going to happen is either this training is going to turn out awesome, and I'm going to learn and I'll do things differently. But if you don't trust me and you don't allow me to learn, then how are we going to get better?" Well, that assistant superintendent was a great leader. And she walked away and said, "I trust you, and I hope everything goes really well." And I did too. So, number three, four ways to break leadership avoidance. In that last example, I reframed the discomfort as growth, and I shared with that assistant superintendent that, "Hey, this is a learning opportunity. Trust me, let me roll this out, and we will all learn and choose differently as needed." And I'm happy to say that it went really well because, hello, I have an amazing team. I wasn't doing it by myself. A leader always has other leaders, and we work unitedly and we co-collaborate. And I was very grateful for that. Number three, act before certainty arrives, meaning you can have indication of what is needed and what is next, and do your due diligence and make a decision. You're going to do your best, and not everything goes perfectly because there's no such thing as perfection. And number four, when you choose to exert personal agency, you're always strengthening your self leadership. So, this is a blog that's written. You can find this on joyoptions.org. It's under Joy Insights, and we looked at avoidance patterns. We looked at personal agency and how to change avoidance to exerting personal agency. And we looked at four specific things that could be done. And this is the one that was acting with certainty. Many leaders wait for perfection in their clarity, and you don't always have every answer. And then what happens when leaders stop avoiding? Well, when leaders stop avoiding and they start using their personal agency to make decisions, conversations become more honest because people know that they can trust you and they can ask questions, whether the questions are difficult or not. And teams gain confidence because they know that they can trust the leadership and they know that there's co-collaboration in conversations and in choices, and a reflection on the leadership patterns. So every leader carries patterns. I do. Every person carries patterns. And one of the strongest ways to move from avoidance to exertion of personal agency is to become aware. And I have what's called the Joy Jewel Awareness. And there are different tools, knowledge, and skills that can help leaders to grow in their awareness. And here's an invitation for you to grow in your awareness. On joyoptions.org, JOYOPTIONS.org, there is something that's called the Mindset Assessment. The Joy Mindset Assessment helps individuals to understand how they are operating in the moment in their mindset. Remember, mindset is not static, it changes. But in that moment, based on those questions in that assessment, and it's a quick assessment, your questions, your answers to those questions will define the mindset that you are operating in. There are four mindsets: the restricted mindset, the awakening mindset, the natural mindset, and the joy mindset. And in each of those mindsets, there's knowledge, skills, tools, and strategies. And the goal is always to embody joy. Joy means journey options you choose. It's about your free will. It's about your personal agency. And when you take this assessment, you're going to see what quadrant, what mindset you are operating in. And you will receive 21 days of knowledge, skills, and strategies to help you move to embodying the joy mindset. Now, if you're already operating in the joy mindset, awesome. We can always get better, and you'll still receive information about the joy mindset and how to grow into a stronger mindset. And each of those quadrants have different skills, different knowledge, different tools, and different strategies because you're progressing to the joy mindset. So remember to like, follow, and share and comment if you have anything you would like to share on this. Today, we talked specifically about avoidance, leadership avoidance. And we looked at how to move from avoidance to agency. And we dove into how avoidance protects a person's comfort. But if you exert your personal agency, you have greater joy because joy is journey options you choose.